Welcome to another day in the Matrix. This is the Yellow Bricks Road Decoded. The 15th annual BRICS Summit will be hosted in Johannesburg, South Africa from August 22nd to the 24th. We're about a week away from that event, so this is perfect timing to share today's presentation, which will be part 5 in the Jubilee Decoded series after my last release titled August Blue Moon Decoded, which came out about a month ago from today. And here we are now about 2 weeks out from this blue supermoon on August 31st. I'm really excited to dive into today's decode. I can't wait to share all these gems with the community, and as always, make sure to take notes during this one because it'll be packed with gnosis. And this way, if you have any questions or are unaware of something that I brought up during today's presentation, you can ask our community in the Discord. That's the best place for any general questions because then we can all collaborate together. We have so many incredible decoders, astrologers, and esoteric analysts. Make sure to leverage on each other and each other's knowledge. I'm putting in the work to create these presentations and get them out to you before these key dates arrive, so make sure to work together because that collaboration is what makes our community what it is. So let's get into today's decode. As I mentioned a little bit ago, this next BRICS Summit will be hosted in Johannesburg, sometimes pronounced Johannesburg. And some important things to note on just out of the gate. Johannesburg is known as the City of Gold. In the Zulu language, it's called Igoli. Of course, I might not be pronouncing that exactly correct, but just consider this connection. So this is a very important thing to consider for the rest of today's decode titled The Yellow Bricks Road, which of course is a spin and play on the words from The Wizard of Oz, follow the yellow brick road. Some of you are probably aware that movie was created by a theosophist, L. Frank Baum, who was well aware of the occult and alchemy, and this novel and movie, arguably one of the most famous movies ever, was actually just exposing the banking system and how it operates and who runs it in the shadows. And as I mentioned in the intro, this upcoming 15th annual BRICS Summit is on August 22nd through the 24th, which means this summit wraps up exactly a week before the blue moon. And again, if you haven't watched my last presentation, August Blue Moon Decoded, I highly suggest you check that out because it includes crucial information that will help you have a more solid foundation of understanding for what we're about to get into today. Now, let's get back to the basics to build some foundation for anyone who is new to this acronym, BRICS. BRICS stands for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. The term BRIC was introduced in 2001. Keep in mind, 2001. That was during the 9/11 ritual. And this term was introduced by none other than the chairman of Goldman Sachs. And if you follow my work, you'll know I always bring up that moment when Alessio Rostani was on live television and he said that governments don't rule the world, Goldman Sachs rules the world. It was a pretty baller mic drop moment in financial history. Shout out to Alessio Rostani. So, according to Wikipedia, they were formed in September of 2006, so about 5 years after this term was coined, of course, during the month of the Hebrew New Year. So this you could see just by scrolling right here to the formation. It doesn't give you an exact date. It would be great to know of that. So if anyone here in our community knows the exact date of their formation, please feel free to share that with us. That'd be really cool to know how close it was to actual Rosh Hashanah, the Hebrew New Year. And we all know who these guys are batting for, right? They like to all pretend like we're against each other and there's all these different countries and wars, but in the end of the day, they're all playing golf together. These guys included with the United States government, with Canada's government, with Mexico's government, with all of Europe. They like to play this game of separation, but it's all under the blanket of globalism. It's important that we're all aware of that at the start of today's decode. So regarding the final finality of BRICS becoming BRICS. From BRIC to having that S means that South Africa joined in on the party in 2010. So if we're fast forwarding from 2006 when they were formed over to the first formal summit in 2009, that was just Brazil, Russia, India, and China at the time. A year later, South Africa joined. And South Africa actually officially attended the third annual summit in 2011, which was hosted in China. So these BRICS nations combined own a very large percentage of the global gold reserves. This is where it starts to get pretty interesting on theory. And if they were to move forward with their own basket currency, such as, for example, the SDR, which is called Special Drawing Rights, and they were to back it with gold, this could lead to a very dramatic change in the global financial atmosphere. And this is something that I shared actually last month, this concept and idea of an SDR-like concept backed by gold, and if anyone was to go forward with it, it would be these BRICS nations. So with theories coming from all angles, even as far as talks of a World War III ritual in the making, if something like this was to go down. So for those who heard the term SDR and are unaware of what that is, it stands for Special Drawing Rights. It goes by the ISO code XDR. That's really important. You guys are well aware of these X currencies. We have XRP, XDC, XLM. You're also aware of XMR, and we have even XBT, which is Bitcoin. And a lot of people are unaware of this. A lot of people that speak on the concept of ISO 222 compliance, they disregard the fact that Bitcoin already has an X in front of it. I digress, but I think that's important to mention. Bitcoin's not going anywhere. It's part of this whole cabal. Now, this SDR concept is pretty interesting. It was created and it is maintained by the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, since 1969, just 2 years before the Nixon shock in 1971. And that time frame that I found to be what I'm calling the last Jubilee, around President Nixon's resignation. And the parallels between the early 1970s and right now are stunning. Everything from their Shemitah year to their Jubilee that followed, and everything that went down with the change in the financial ecosystem. As you're aware, the Nixon shock, of course, being that event that suspended the world's reserve currency, the US dollar, from convertibility to gold, which effectively terminated the Bretton Woods system. One moment, just going to take a quick sip of water. So let's get a little bit into the code, shall we? Since I brought up the concept of the International Monetary Fund and that parasite, and we have that spelled out giving you this 119 in full reduction. Again, that 119 is the mirror of 9/11, and we know that we are approaching the 22nd anniversary of September 11th ritual that happened back in 2001. I brought up that year a little bit earlier regarding BRICS. 2001 was a Shemitah year, and it was right after the dot-com bubble. So that was a really powerful Shemitah cycle because you had the dot-com bubble in 2000, popped around March 2000, and then you had just a year later this 9/11 event, and that was like, just nail in the coffin for what was already problematic about speculative assets floating around the economy. These companies that didn't have much of a working technology, but they were just riding a wave of a cultural moment, which is exactly what 2021 was. 2021 was this cultural moment for cryptocurrency when NFTs hit the, world stage and all of these meme coins and all of that. And now we look at those charts today and we see that a lot of that has lost 99% of its value. You could pretty much go to any of those celebrities who were purchasing NFTs back in 2021 and you could compare where they purchased them to where they are today. And we're seeing ones that were worth $100,000 initially, and now today they're below $10. So it's just a cultural moment. The bubble popped, and here we are. And if you remember, 1 year before that, we had the C19 event, which was obviously, you're all aware, we don't need to discuss that at length at all, but it was that double whammy of having this moment where all of what was going on in our normal world has completely been flipped over on its head. We have huge change. The Federal Reserve responds by printing a historic amount of money, the most money they've ever printed pretty much in 1 year, going back to the entire existence of the Federal Reserve System since 1913. They printed all of that money up until then in a single year. And that was all after that C19 event. We have a artificial bull run to follow into 2021, into about middle of the year. That comes to an end. And then since we've been watching a lot of this nonsense crypto market has lost a tremendous amount of its value. Of course, the bad actors need to be flushed away. There's still a lot to be fully flushed away, but we've seen what's gone down since with Celsius, with BlockFi even taking a hit from what happened with SBF and this nonsense of FTX and the FTT token. We had what happened with Terra Luna. You guys are well aware of this. So I am feeling like this makes a lot of sense, that this 2000 era to 2001 is almost like the 2020-2021 concept, but almost reversed, where we had a ritual first this time, and then we had the bull run followed by a collapse, and then that was isolated specifically to crypto. And back in 2000, we had the dot-com bubble, of course, isolated to tech stocks, and then we had the event ritual after 9/11, nail in the coffin, huge correction, took some time to recover. So, of course, there are huge differences, but if we were to take the scale of popularity of the ritual, C19 is just like 9/11. Ironically, both having the 19 in them. You guys know I'm joking. But anyways, another thing to notice about this International Monetary Fund is we have the 96. And I want to show you over here with special drawing rights, it goes by this numeric code of 960. That 96 again. Mirror of 96 is 69, the yin-yang symbol. And the SDR was released in 1969. Remember, Bitcoin's current all-time high is $69,000. The Queen just died during her Platinum Jubilee at 96 years old, during America's Pluto's return. This is so important to revisit. It's stuff I used to talk about quite a bit back in 2022. So the Platinum Jubilee term, that's very special because it was right into the transition of our current biblical Jubilee year. And she died on September 8th, which is significant to our 9/11 connections for this year. So September 8th this year will be the first full year since the Queen's death, just days away from the 22nd anniversary of 9/11. Think about this, okay? Of course, a death ritual. And since we're talking about the International Monetary Fund, note how the coordinates of their headquarters are 38 degrees north and 77 degrees west. So thinking about this 38, we have International Monetary Fund giving you 308 in English ordinal. You remove that 0 with the rules of numerology, brings you back to 38. And then also we had 77 degrees west, and this is the 77th anniversary that we're in right now of the IMF. And those sevens are crucial, especially this year, because of the connection to Jubilee and how the Jubilee is the year after having 7 cycles of 7 Shemitas, or 49 years, and then Jubilee is practiced on the 50th year, meaning right at the end of this year, you will be in the full completion of 11 cycles of this for the IMF, moving into its 78th year. So that's huge, the 77. Of course, the formation of the IMF was right after World War II. Remember what I said earlier about this theory that BRICS moving forward with their own basket currency backed by gold could potentially lead to a global war based on trade. And for those who are unaware, the Queen's Platinum Jubilee was to celebrate her 70th year as Queen. And an important connection I found that brings this all together is the managing director of the IMF, Kristalina Georgieva, is currently 70 years old, and you'll be able to see that right here. This number 70 is super important, and her birthday was just a couple days ago, by the way. Happy B-Day to the Jackal. Vladimir Putin is also 70 years old at the time of this presentation. And guess who else is 70 years old? Xi Jinping and also Cyril Ramaphosa. So that's mind-boggling that 3 of these key BRICS leaders, leader of Russia, who's one of the most famous people on earth right now, Xi Jinping, leader of China, effectively, and Cyril, leader of South Africa, and the managing director of the IMF are all 70 years old right now, right after the Queen of England just had her 70th platinum Jubilee year and died. Think about this, family. This is all part of the code. This 70 is a platinum Jubilee number according to the Royal British family. So now we know why the number 69 and 96 are so crucial here, because 69 is the encroaching number moving into 70. And right around that time frame, of course, we have all of these events go down. Remember, on March 10th of this year, which was the 69th day of the year, was when Silicon Valley Bank failed. You can't make this up. So the Queen died at 96 years old during her Platinum Jubilee. And if you take from the day before the Platinum Jubilee of June 5th, let's call it Platinum Jubilee Eve, which is on June 4th, to the day she died on September 8th. I should actually show you this. So we're going to take from 6/4 of 2022 to 9/8 of 2022. And it's 96 days later. She died at 96 years old, going from the Platinum Jubilee date to her death. Is that a coincidence? Gotta love the code. I sincerely believe that all this code tied to the IMF is building a solid foundation for today's Decode and how the rest of this year can play out regarding this overall vision of how BRICS and their developments can impact the global economy. Again, I just want to make sure I reiterate this nuance that I am not saying BRICS will use the SDR, but we can imagine it will be something like that, which is essentially a unit of currency. A unit of accounts, actually, and not an actual currency. It's a unit of accounts. That would be the best way of quickly describing what it is. It's fairy dust. Imagine in today's new world, it will probably operate on the blockchain regarding whatever BRICS does, and would be like the SDR. It will be a basket currency that is pegged to some fiat currencies, as well as most likely some precious metals. But this is all theory, and no one really knows for certain how this will all go down. We're just doing our best to use our gnosis of all this data we've collected thus far. But essentially, the current SDR is a huge sham. It's just more belief on top of an already overflowing nonsense volcano of belief, and it's never ending. If you study this stuff, it'll make your stomach hurt knowing just how made up and fraudulent this entire economy is. I mean, honestly, NFTs are more legitimate than the SDR. But it is what it is. So another big player in all of this, of course, would be the World Economic Forum. And I think that they're important to bring up because we've had a lot of their involvement since the C19 event with Klaus Schwab. So we're just going to go ahead and go into the code of World Economic Forum, and you could see another 96 connection. It also has the 222, which you're going to see that in this key term we've been talking about. Special drawing rights gives you 222, the SDR, in the same cipher, by the way. Also note this 105, because you're going to see the number 15 show up a lot in the rest of today's Decode, but remind yourself that we're considering this concept of BRICS moving forward with an SDR-like concept to be the new world reserve. And special drawing rights is 105. That goes back to 15, the rules of numerology, of course, before reduction. Keep note of that. Something for you guys to write down. So let's go over to the World Economic Forum, and you could see that they were actually founded. This gets fun. They were founded just 2 years after the introduction of the SDR, in the same year of the Nixon shock, and in 1971, which is perfect for this year's code because that was 52 years ago. And right now we're in the Chinese year of the rabbit, and you know this 52 code shows up in rabbit. This is critical. Okay. And if people are denying that utility of the Chinese zodiac and this whole decoding system, please rewatch my Year of the Rabbit Decoded. Or if you're new here, watch that Decode. It's critical for you to see how we were able to utilize all of that code to be able to determine how the Super Bowl would go, to determine how the NBA championship finals would go, all using that code, and to determine big events happening this year, specifically because of the Jubilee. Now, that's really amazing how this all shook out. And with this 52, it's specific to us here because we're focused on cryptocurrency, and cryptocurrency has that 52. The World Economic Forum was founded by Klaus Martin Schwab. And you can see in Chaldean, that also gives you 52. The World Economic headquarters, the World Economic Forum headquarters, are in Switzerland. There's your 52 again. You see where this is going? All these 52s are tied to this year, and specifically the World Economic Forum. Again, making this year very special financially, and we know without a shadow of a doubt the type of reality the World Economic Forum and similar organizations are mapping out for the populace. Klaus himself straight up said, "You'll own nothing and be happy," and that's definitely the way this is all moving, except that form of happiness will most likely be medicated or simulated through pharmaceuticals and virtual reality, artificial intelligence. I'll say that again. This concept of happiness that will be part of our so-called future world will most likely be a medicated happiness, or it will be simulated through pharmaceuticals and virtual reality, artificial intelligence. Now, another big part of this BRICS conversation, of course, is gold. We have gold giving you that 38 code. And before I was talking about that number 38 because it was showing up in International Monetary Fund right there with the 308. But gold is big in all of this. And remember, the coordinates of the International Monetary Fund were at 38 degrees north. Gold, 38. Johannesburg, it's called the City of Gold. All right. I actually didn't even look into their coordinates. Oh, we got the okay. So there's definitely more code to go into in this. I don't think it's as crucial for me to break all of this stuff down specifically with Johannesburg, more over South Africa, but I'm finding a couple things here just right away, like how the postal code is 2001 and PO Box 2000, like wherever those numbers are coming in. We were literally just talking about 2001 being that Shemitah year and how crucial it was. And this GDP at 131, we're going to talk about that number a little bit later, tied to the 32nd prime and Leo, but I don't want to get too ahead of myself. Yeah, like this gold theme here with South Africa, with Johannesburg, it's really fascinating, and I would love to learn more about this, and ultimately, I would love to visit this place. Anyone who's in South Africa in our community, shout out, much love, and maybe go visit another city while this event is going on. Protect your prana. But all jokes aside, we were talking about the 38 tied to gold and also this number 17. 17 is huge because it's the 7th prime number. Let me just show you that really quickly. And we were talking earlier about the Shemitah and the Jubilee, and all of that has to do with the number 7. So this 7th prime and the 7th day of our week is the Sunday, the sun's day, and the sun is associated with gold. We could go over here to the Royal Society of Chemistry's periodic table, and when we go to gold, you're going to see that gold sun right there. It's one of the main symbols. And of course, when you start getting more into alchemy, you start to see that all of these so-called planets, which are just mythologies, well, we could go deep into that, but it would take too much time for today's decode. But essentially, they all are also associated with some precious metal or gemstone. But most of you are aware of this concept, and this was a big thing that I used for the last World Cup because of the symbolism behind Argentina and that gold sun that they had on the blue and white aesthetic. It's huge, very important, and all of the negative aspects I was seeing with France quickly helped me determine that Argentina would win. And that was another piece of data that was super helpful and profound moving into my decode that I did for the Super Bowl. Everything about Lionel Messi and what happened with that. So we were talking about gold, 17 Chaldean, that's your 7th prime number. 7th day of the week is the sun's day in the Gregorian system. And the sun is associated with gold. G is your 7th letter in the alphabet. That G is powerful. You've seen it in the Freemason logo. There's debate over what it stands for. Some people believe it stands for gnosis. Some people believe it stands for generative, like the generative principle. I personally don't give a shit what it stands for. What matters more is the symbolism around it, not the G. Believe it or not, I could see that people are spending way too much time arguing about these nuances when in actuality, it's all meaning other things anyways. The New World Order and the people who run this world don't have just one meaning for anything. I'll give a great example and then I'll move on. But I know you guys like these little nuggets of wisdom as we go. You'll see lions on sigils all the time. And a lot of people believe that they are lions, and usually they are not. They are lynxes. But you tell people this, and they start to really get upset because all of their years of knowledge in studying esoterica gets flipped on its head, and they don't want to accept that it could be more than what they were told. So knowledge and seeking of wisdom is like swimming to a new island, and you burn all these calories to get there. You get on the island and you find your truth, and then you find out that there's another island further away that you must swim to get higher knowledge. And rinse, repeat. And you're always finding a lot of bullshit along the way. So it's fun, and make it fun. You know, when we're here in this community surrounded by so many great minds, speak and listen curiously. That will help you a lot, and it will make the community stronger. But getting back to this, we were talking about the sun and gold, and the sun is also associated with the dragon, the sun portal, the dragon that breathes fire. And we're moving into the year of the dragon in Chinese zodiac next year, which will be the Hebrew year of 5784. We will no longer be in a Jubilee. Woo! And BRICS equals 24 in full reduction. So this is where we're, getting back into the main theme of today with BRICS, with that 24, and Russia has that 24 in the same cipher. And they're the most popular out of all these nations right now because of the Russia-Ukraine conflict, which I've spoken about also a lot in my decodes back in 2022, talking about what happened with the Super Bowl that was during the Shemitah year. That Super Bowl, I know many of you might have found my work back then, or if you're newer to it as of this year, it might be something that's a little difficult to look up. But if you just scroll through my videos on YouTube, you will find information right before the Super Bowl that happened with the Cincinnati Bengals against the Rams. I made about, I believe, 2 videos about it, and it broke this down in depth. And then after that event happened, I noticed something that could be applicable to the real world and the world stage. And of course, all these big sporting events are just feeding into the simulacrum, and all of the prana that we give it feeds that as well. It's like its food source, if you will. That's my belief. So if we remember how that Super Bowl went, the Rams were losing the entire time basically, and then they came back to win right at the end. Then the symbolism there matched perfectly Russia-Ukraine, and I do see that Ukraine, although they're in the so-called losing position for the most part, according to the global narrative, they will come back into a power position in the fourth quarter. I'm holding up air quotes right now, if you can imagine me, because this is all like an analogy and a theory on top of another theory. And of course, it's based in a decode, which is very esoteric. So I see this Russia moment right now with the world court coming after Vladimir Putin as, again, it's bread and circus for the elite, for the masses, but on the elite chess game side of things, it's just working perfectly in concordance to all of the rituals that happened in 2020, 2021, moving into 2022, and it's working like a ripple effect of time that will ripple out into 2024. Okay? Maybe rewind what I just said and rewrite it down if you need to, because it's quite a deep concept, but I believe it. I really do see that being something that goes down on the world stage. And we know Ukraine is tied to gold. Ukraine, 79 in English ordinal. Gold, 79th element on the periodic table. 79 is your 22nd prime number. You see right here, 22 Chaldean. We moved out of those years, so no one cares anymore, right? Isn't this interesting how people in the world only care when they're told to care? Also, shout out to the people in the community that are Ukrainian or that are moved from Ukraine because of all of this. I want you to realize where I'm coming from, and I'm about that love frequency. It's just these are the facts, and this is how the New World Order plays all of this. And they don't care if they take casualties along the way. These people are ruthless. So shout out to my Ukrainian wolves. I want you to know that I love you guys, and it's all about expansion here. But there's code that's pure in front of our faces. Russia with this 24 is big. BRICS with the 24. We're moving into the year of 24 in the Hebrew system, added up with your numerology. And those 24s reduced down to 6. 6 is the number of man. It's the number of carbon. 6 protons, 6 neutrons, 6 electrons. So this number 24 is tied to the sun through timekeeping. We have 24 hours in the day. Hours is Horus, right? And this number 24 is also tied to Jupiter, the zodiac logo of Jupiter. And you'll just be able to see that really quickly right there. That's the 24. That's all about Jupiter. And a symbol of Jupiter is the lightning bolt, again connected to the dragon, as the dragon breathes fire like the sky breathes lightning. Okay? The dragon breathes fire like the sky breathes lightning. And we're going to get a little bit into the mythology of all of that in a moment. The 24th element on the periodic table, let's go over to that, is chromium. All right? Now, this is pretty fascinating because its atomic mass is 51, just like BRICS equals 51 in English ordinal. But if you really are fair here, you round that up to 52. That would probably be the better way to go about that. And that 52 ties perfectly into the year we're in right now, the year of the rabbit. And in Chinese system, we don't have the same New Year, of course. They have their Chinese Lunar New Year, which means that it will be past our transition into 2024 already. I'm not entirely sure the exact date. It could be at maybe February 1st or something like that, but just rest assured I will make a full Year of the Dragon Decoded next year. So don't worry about that. I'll make that in advance for everyone. So this 52 connection to chromium, again, I was sharing how we have cryptocurrency giving you this 52 as well, and chromium being that 24. This is big. This is really big moving into this year. And this blue and white symbolism is very financial. Like you have American Express uses blue and white, PayPal uses blue and white, Charles Schwab uses blue and white. I mean, you name it. There's so many companies. Coinbase uses blue and white. Chase, JP Morgan uses blue and white. Crypto.com uses blue. I mean, so many of them that use this blue and white aesthetic. Keep that in mind. All right. Now, Chromium, we were talking about this 51 and 24, going back to BRICS with the 51 and 24 right there in a single element. The mirror of 51 is 15, and this brings us over to China with that 15 there in Chaldean, another big player in this whole economy. BRICS with 51, and I would like to go over to the periodic table again to the 51st element, which is antimony. This is really going to get deep now. And also shout out to Logan over at Decode Your Reality for influencing me to start using this periodic table more, and it's definitely helped me a lot. I'm also quite aware of the Greeks and these prefixes and suffixes and etymology, and a student of mythology, so that's what really helps me with all of this. I already had that awareness, so when you give me this periodic table to play with, I definitely have a lot of fun. And we were talking about 51 tied back to BRICS, and the 51st element being antimony, which you can see the Royal Society of Chemistry uses the Eye of Horus as the logo. Antimony being the Greek anti and monos, meaning not alone. Think about that. That's the eye that sees. And antimony has an atomic mass of 121, and 121 is when South Africa comes into the conversation. You can see that right there. 121, perfectly tied back to BRICS, with that 51. Of course, exoterically being the continent where the ancient civilization of Egypt was, and that's again tied back to Horus. You got that Eye of Horus right there. It's important, because, we have this BRICS summit. These 51 and 15 connections are crucial, since this 15th annual BRICS summit will be in South Africa. It'll be in Africa, and we have that 51 right here showing up, and the 15 code, which I was talking about a little bit earlier, and the fact that it will be the 15th summit. And since the first day of the summit is August 22nd, let me just show you the date here. We have 8/22. This being on a Tuesday, this is the day of Mars, Martes. And if you look at the code of Mars, it has that 51 and that 15. This is coded perfectly, Mars being the god of war with that 15. And also 42, the mirror of 24. We brought that up so many times before, BRICS being 24 right there. And of course, the mirror of that 51 being 15, coming back into war. I do feel like this narrative is a setup. I'm sure you guys have heard some of these theories on your own, and perhaps you could also share in the Discord what you guys believe, if this power play by BRICS could lead to some serious conflict on the world stage. And perhaps it won't even be with bombs and tanks. It could be something with artificial intelligence. That's how sick this world is right now. That's totally kind of what they're showing us it will be. So if you take from the last day of the BRICS summit, which will be on the 24th, over to Rosh Hashanah, which is September 17th, that's exactly 24 days. You have the 24 there, you have the 24 there. We talked about this number 24 so many times, and this date of September 17th just so happens to be a 24 standard date numerology. Also, the day leaving 105 days in the year, which becomes the 15, and that all ties back to the 15th annual BRICS Summit. Rosh Hashanah ties perfectly to this event. Now, returning back to the periodic table, because we were talking about the number 15, that is phosphorus. Phosphorus is where we get the term light bringer, bringer of light, which is Lucifer. That's your 15th element. And when you type out the name of all the countries of BRICS, I'm going to show you really quickly. I have this written out to save time. We have 348 if I typed out Brazil, Russia, China, India, South Africa, 3 plus 4 plus 8 after you reduce it, coming back to 15. How many 15s can we bring up today? So some of you might remember during last year, that was the year of the tiger, and we talked about that 15 every single video that I put out. This was huge, and anything associated with the tiger or the number 15 or the number 47, 47 being the 15th prime number, had a very negative energy during the year of the tiger. But so far during this year, those numbers are much more neutral. And I think for 2024, these numbers will actually be positive for anything associated with the number 15, 47, and the code of dragon. But I don't want to get too far into that right now because that might confuse people. Let's just stick with the number 15, how in the year of the tiger, it was a negative aspect. I mean, look at what happened with Hex. Was 15 in the year of the tiger, dramatic correction. XRP during the year of the dragon, dramatic correction. We have XRP here. But I'm just showing you this right now because I said to you, I believe in 2024, it will be positive, anything associated with the 15 or 47, that being the 15th prime number. Also notice that the logo of XRP is the X. That's 24. This is the year we're moving into. Twitter just changed their company to X Corp. I haven't even done a decode on this yet. I probably really don't need to, unless we'll see. I did bring up some of these ideas in a couple of the decodes that I put out as part of the Jubilee series. But yeah, anyways, this X Corp move, it was because they were preparing for this. They're preparing to move into the year of the X, the 24, the Hebrew year 5784, 24, year of the dragon. And before I was talking about the number 15 and how I see there being potentially that code for this upcoming year of the 24, which does not start on our new year, by the way. It starts on the Hebrew New Year, Rosh Hashanah, the 15th, 16th, and 17th of this September, which is just 1 month away. So remember what I'm saying here. Now, China gives you the 15. We talked about it earlier. Also, CBDCs gives you 15. There it is, central bank digital currencies acronym, and we're getting that 15 code. And we know Christine Lagarde of the Euro Central Bank said that they would be deciding on a digital euro in October of this year, essentially saying that they are preparing to launch their own CBDC for the euro. Let's type in digital euro and see what we're getting. Boom, right away we have the 121. We talked about that before with South Africa giving you the 121. I believe it was also when we were looking at the 51st element, antimony. It has an atomic mass of 121. BRICS equals 51. South Africa will be hosting this 15th annual BRICS summit. 15 is the mirror of 51. Digital euro equals 121. South Africa equals 121. This 121 is an important number because it's 11 squared. You could see that right there, 11 times 11, and BRICS gives you 11 in Chaldean. That 11 is Janus. It is the two faces. It is the two pillars. It's the master number. It's Yakin and Boaz. It's the twin towers. The euro makes up almost 58% of the weight of the DXY. So if I just go over here real quickly, I want to break this down because I think it's important. When we talk about the DXY, the US dollar currency index by weight, I'm not sure if I'll be able to find anything on this that quickly. Oh, boom, right here. So you could see. The weight of this is 57.6% euro. So we're talking about the concept of a digital euro and the Euro Central Bank making a decision as early as a couple months from today. And because 58% of it is weighted in the US dollar currency index, if there was a digital euro, this would most likely dramatically change the landscape of the entire Western economy. And with us moving into the year of the dragon with the 24 symbolism, and this ties to Jupiter and Zeus, these are all important things to consider. From a mythological standpoint, it was believed that the reason for an eclipse, I really hope you're paying attention right now, the reason for an eclipse in mythology was because a dragon ate the sun. And the Greek poet Archilochus wrote that Zeus had turned day into night. That's when you're eclipsed. That's huge. And that's something I need to break down a little bit further in my upcoming decoding mastermind course. But getting back to today's decode, I want you to consider that next year is the Great American Eclipse that will form an X over the United States. Let me see if I could get some data on this. Just a picture would even be helpful for the Great American Eclipse. And here we go. Beautiful. We have the picture. So this is a huge event. And I was just talking about eclipses and the mythology behind them, which has to do with the dragon eating the sun, which I was going to wait on sharing for the Year of the Dragon Decoded, but we need to get this out now because we're just a couple months away from this October solar eclipse. And it's important for you guys to be aware of today. The first eclipse out of this X formation will be the upcoming solar eclipse on October 14th, and then you have the following one, which will be on April 8th of 2024. And the point at which they make an X is right around Austin, Texas. And Austin, Texas is really interesting since during the C-19 pandemic, so many celebrities and entertainers started moving from Los Angeles to Austin, Texas, even with what happened with Joe Rogan moving, arguably one of the biggest podcasters ever. And funny enough, Austin, Texas is ranked 33rd for population out of all the cities in North America. It's a pretty interesting fact. And of course, Elon Musk, who owns Twitter, now called X Corp, his company Tesla, self-driving car company, has their headquarters in Austin, Texas. He also owns SpaceX, and he named his recent child X. He's also 52 years old this year. Let me pull up Elon really quickly. This guy is a prana hoarder. So you could see he's 52 this year. How insane is that? The fact that we're in the year of the rabbit, 52, turning 52 this year. And he's getting all the prana this year because of this move with Twitter. And just that nuance of the Tesla factory being located in Austin, Texas. And we are having this great American eclipse with an X. And he names his company X Corp, and Tesla's located in that city, basically where that X is happening. I mean, arguably like San Antonio, but it doesn't really matter. We're talking about a huge amount of land in this, just to give you some popular city to chew on. And I always, like all things that I share, investigate further, have fun, share it with the community. That's what we're all about. Now, I've shared this theory before about Elon and how he's being used to bring on X Corp and this similar concept to WeChat from China to the Western world through this social media platform. This will most likely be one of the so-called solutions to a response of the potential power play of BRICS nations creating their own basket currency, like we mentioned earlier. This was always the plan, and it's been scripted for decades. Elon is just being used as the talking head of the operation. He is an agent. And we're just living through the moment right now as we speak. This can literally all unfold within a year from this decode being released. So check back in August 2024 to see how things turned out. So a big part of my thesis is that this great American eclipse will be ritualized between the solar eclipse of October 14th this year and April 8th of next year, and specifically the date of April 15th, 2024, which I've brought up many times. I suspect on that date there will be a fire ritual. Keep that date in mind. More than likely something big will happen on that exact date. You guys know I talk about dates so often, but I've never put emphasis on such a specific date so far in advance like I have with this particular date. That's because of the amount of decoding I've put into that, and just I pretty much know. And if something doesn't happen that day, I would be really concerned that maybe an even bigger event is on the horizon, leading into specifically the Summer Olympics in Paris, which the logo of the Paris Summer Olympics is the 24, the Jupiter Zodiac logo. Keep that in mind. It's all about fire. Now, that's why the world right now has been experiencing the worst fires of all time. It's all pre-ritual moving into the year of the X. All right. So the fire ritual having everything to do with being solar eclipse, the sun, ball of fire during the year of the dragon. Dragon is associated with the sun portal. The sun is associated with gold. Gold equals 38. And the dragon is associated with fire equals 38. 38 is 3 8s. 888. 888 is 24. The X, the 24th letter. It's all connected. The Greek alphabet has exactly 24 letters, the last being omega. You've all heard that term alpha, omega, alpha and omega, and you could see alpha omega giving you the 38. It also has 79, like gold on the periodic table is the 79th element. Right there. We talked about that also before with Ukraine by the code. Omega means great O, while Omicron means little o. You might have heard this before. That was the PSYOP variant that they tried so hard to respellcast the world with. Maybe it worked for some people. But this is all tied to gold symbolism from an alchemical perspective, from lead to gold. The 2024 will be a very transformative year for finances, and it starts with the end of this Jubilee on September 17th, just a month away from this presentation being released. Now, one thing I wanted to bring up, I'm going to just close out a couple of these tabs. I think it's important for us to look into this list right here, which is all of the nations that have formally applied to join BRICS. Now, this is worrisome to me. If we look at this list, you'll see that most of these applications are coming in 2023, just a couple scattered of 2022. I believe this is a huge sign that if they start to accept all of these, that this will be a huge change in what we're used to having in our financial system. And you could see Mexico is even part of this. This is really big, but I just wanted to bring this up. United Arab Emirates. Think about that, guys. All of these nations joining in, already such big nations such as Brazil, India, China, Russia. Massive if this all joins. And I think it's just funny how they've started their application process this year. Why are they doing that this year in the Jubilee? BRICS started in 2006. Why wait so long? You see how interesting that is? It's like this is the GTFO signal. So I do find that to be pretty amazing. I'm going to move through a couple of these things because I want to have some talking points about the Year of the Dragon and specifically some of the big player characters in this being Vladimir Putin, who was born in, I think, 52. Let me get to the exact code. All right. Also, I hope you guys are enjoying today's Decode. This is really packed with a lot, and I'm excited for you all to get through it and tell me what you think. But Vladimir Putin, born in 1952. 52 was the year of the dragon. And the same goes for Cyril, the current president of South Africa, where this next BRICS summit will take place. He was also born in the year of the dragon. So during your Chinese zodiac year, you can experience some of the greatest opportunities, but it all comes back to the integrity of the man. If you lack integrity, you can actually still profit greatly from these opportunities, but you will have it all stripped away from you in the same year. This is just how the energy works. So during your Chinese zodiac year, it's important to have integrity. Be the realest you that you've ever been. But as for these jackals who are running the BRICS nations and this NWO, they have no soul, so it doesn't even matter for them. They're performing magic rituals at the highest levels to maintenance this prana they receive from the populace. It's all prana to them. It's all just energy through belief. For you, be honorable. But this definitely tells me that whatever happens in this 15th annual BRICS Summit will be a setup moving us into the year of the dragon, where this is noticeable, where we should see a noticeable change in the economy. And Vladimir Putin and this guy, Cyril Ramaphosa, will definitely be involved in the conversation to push this new agenda. Arguably, I mean, you have the entire continent of Africa that could be taken over here. It's big. There's a lot of development going on there, by the way. And you know, the biblical concept term, what was first will become last, and what was last will become first. So all of the so-called poverty that we're used to seeing in certain places in the world might be displaced, might completely change and be restructured because of this BRICS concept. It's an interesting thing to keep in mind. Now, let's cover a couple things about the exact dates for this upcoming BRICS Summit. We have August 22nd being the 131 days left in the year. That 131 is the 32nd prime number. As you can see here, that number 32 ties to Leo by the code. You could see that. And you can also see that Leo is 15. That's also why I believe in next year during Leo, we will have a very positive market moving into the fall. But anywho, I don't think that month will be a good performance. I just think the market will be looking good in that time compared to looking back to right now, a year before. But just consider that Leo has this 15, and we're talking about the first day of the 15th annual BRICS Summit. Again, that 15 code. This also has a 19 standard date numerology. That 19 comes back to Ra being 19. Again, more of this sun theme. But more importantly about this Leo connection is that August 22nd is not only Leo in tropical, but also in sidereal. So both systems. And in tropical, this meeting is happening during the last days of Leo, transitioning into Virgo, the Virgin Mary, which is Isis. And Virgo, also another 19, if I remember correctly. There we go. And we'll still be in sidereal Leo until the 16th of September, which is huge because that is literally Rosh Hashanah this year, the Hebrew New Year, the end of Jubilee. Also, there's a little Saturnian code in these dates of the summit. Let me just go back to the first day. And we have a 73 in the double-digit date numerology. That 73 is the 21st prime. You could see that right there. And let me go to the last day of the summit, which you can see is a 21 standard date numerology. And that, again, ties back to Saturn by the code 2121. Saturn is Satoshi. And if we take from August 24th to the last day of the summit to the first day of Rosh Hashanah, you're going to see that that is 21 days apart. And this day has a 21 date numerology. Of course, Saturn is all tied to this, Rosh Hashanah, because he's the god of harvest, the Grim Reaper. You reap what you sow. This is all about the moon as well, because it's on the new moon cycles that they change Rosh Hashanah. And if you think about the number 21 that we were talking about before, the mirror of 21 is 12. The palindrome of the 21 and 12 is 121. And if you take from 121 days after the last day of this summit, that's going to bring you to December 23rd, which is, that is the last day of Saturnalia. Speaking of Saturn, which also lands on a Saturn day. Again, all tied into this 21 code. And remember, the 121 is South Africa, where this summit will be hosted. And the standard date numerology of the last day of Saturnalia is the 15. And we're about to have the 15th annual BRICS Summit. Okay, you guys see that this is so coded in. The 22nd through 24th, this Leo ending in tropical and us moving through that is incredibly coded. Now, my personal theory on all of this to wrap up today's video is that yes, this idea of BRICS creating their own currency is in the cards and moving forward with it soon. This idea of creating their own gold-backed CBDC is a very plausible thing. With the Euro Central Bank essentially making its decisions about the digital euro this October, it sounds like a perfect setup for this upcoming BRICS summit to reveal plans of their own version of this monster. And with those 23 other countries applying to join BRICS, as I showed you before, right over here, just in the past year, it's very obvious that the developing world wants out of the dollar. And I believe that the Scandinavian countries already have a solution they're working on in the background as well. Denmark, Norway, Sweden, and Iceland, those four nations all use their own currencies called the crown, the corona, like corona. Of course, that means crown in Spanish. These four nations could easily create their own basket currency, CBDC, overnight, because in Scandinavia, the social climate of these nations is primed and ready for something like this. It's already so advanced and so liberal and socialist, Bolshevik, that they already accept this with open arms. And they don't even know that they accept it. This isn't me throwing shade at anyone from Scandinavia. It's beautiful, beautiful places. I mean, my favorite country to visit and travel is Iceland. I'm just talking about how easy it would be for them to move forward with something like this, okay? Especially if BRICS went forward with the process. The UK and Ireland is definitely a part of the conversation, could easily move forward with their own system, although Ireland is using the euro and Ireland sharing similar GDP ranks to Denmark, Norway, and Sweden. Perhaps these krona currencies could be part of a basket with the British pound. Of course, that is insanely theoretical, but the globalism will go down regardless, so these are just some plausible ideas. Since I'm well aware that Scandinavian royalty is the actual true royalty in this realm, and the British royalty is just a exoteric cover-up, whilst the real elites operate from the shadows. I've been saying that for years. And another exoteric point to make, the perceived popularity of the British royal family is at an all-time low right now. No one cares even about this new king, and barely cared when the queen passed away. It's just a week of news and the world moved on. There was more drama around the death of Kurt Cobain than there was for the Queen of England. So considering the top 5 most traded currencies in the Forex market being the renminbi, the US dollar, the euro, the Japanese yen, and the GBP, the British pound sterling, we are aware the renminbi would be part of the BRICS next power play, since that currency, that's the currency of the CCP. The euro is most likely going digital soon, as I said several times, and that makes up over half of the weight of the DXY, meaning it will affect the US dollar. This leaves the British pound and the Japanese yen, which I assume regarding Japan, China will swallow up Japan because they are currently in a housing crisis. Japan has a lot of pride, though, so they will probably rather let their entire economy collapse and be in shambles before letting Korea or China take over. Which, by the way, I respect that. I'd rather die standing on my feet than crawling on my knees like a slave. So shout out to Japan. Most of the key nations in Central and South America have already applied to join BRICS. And this includes Mexico, which is key since it shares the land border with the USA, and its job has always been for smuggling and trafficking, and the Mexican business has always preferred US dollars over their local peso. We're talking about the rich. So if Mexico joins BRICS, then that's a huge sign of change coming for the US market. If these 23 nations applied to BRICS actually join, it will seem like the USA and the United Kingdom, which already includes Canada, Australia, New Zealand, against the rest of the world. But we all know here that this is a chess game to further globalism for a one world currency. This is just in its process, with the US dollar being the current world reserve and the prior global superpower being the British Empire. This should all make sense. One moment, just need to take a sip of water. All right. And just be aware of the power of the City of London and all the offshore bank accounts, secrecy accounts, trusts in the Cayman Islands, This is trillions of dollars of unaccounted for debt that is off the books. I personally look at everything in threes. So again, to build on my theory, I see this merger of these so-called independent nations to be split between this new BRICS currency and the current world reserve, the US dollar. And the third part of this would be the wealth of the global elite, that's where the City of London comes in and all these secrecy accounts that are offshore. This would also include the Vatican tied to Switzerland. So again, it will be an unholy trinity of 1, the BRICS basket CBDC, 2, the US dollar, and 3, elite accounts, which will be tied to the City of London, Vatican, Switzerland, held offshore in secrecy accounts called trusts. And this will, of course, be in hard assets, mostly real estate contracts, insurance products, precious metals, and some fiat for a rainy day. 2 of 3 of those are already happening as we speak. It's the BRICS launch of their basket currency that we're anticipating. I feel like with today's presentation, you now have a much better grip on why the end of this Jubilee coming up is in just a month, and this great American eclipse between October 14th of this year and the time where the ECB decides on the digital euro and April 8th of next year, solar eclipse between transitioning into the Chinese New Year of the Year of the Dragon. This is all going to play such a key role in the next big move for the global economy. Perhaps the biggest shift since the introduction of the euro banknotes in 2002 or the subprime mortgage crisis of 2008. We're going to watch change unfold in the next year for the economy. By 2025, we should have much more clarity on where crypto fits into all of this, but it's still my theory that we have one more cycle for crypto to make an incredible return on investment before the end of Q1 in 2025, specifically between April 2024 and next year, Q4 of 2024. Then we're probably get all our crypto regulations out of the way within the same year. And I believe one of the first things we saw that's moving forward with such a thing was XRP no longer being deemed a security. And part of that, all of what I just shared, this is why XRP is a big part of my investment thesis for 2024. We're moving into the year of 24, the year of the X. But Bitcoin and ETH remain the top plays for my long-term crypto portfolio, feeding back into my theory of the tokenization of the stock market and how ETH will be involved in that. We just need an ERC20 washout first, essentially a shitcoin washout, so that ETH can be used for the bigger picture project of the tokenization of the traditional markets. I urge you to look into Ameribor and SOFR, transition out of LIBOR, and do some research into those if you're a little confused with what I'm talking about right now. Ask the community. They'll share resources as well. So 2024 is the year of CBDCs, and whatever is showcased within this next 15th annual BRICS Summit should reveal what I'm calling the Yellow BRICS Road. And that wraps up our presentation. I hope you're all taking notes during this one, and nothing wrong with watching this again because I know it was packed with gnosis and there's lots of food for thought in this one. Appreciate and grateful for every single one of you, and wishing you all an amazing rest of your day in the Matrix. Much love.